Hello, I'm Sarah Abel. I'm a senior Jepson School of Leadership Studies major at the University of Richmond, and tonight we're here with Dr. Thomas F. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, where did your passion for civil rights first come from?
That is a big question. I know we only have take 5. I grew up in the 1960s. I was a little kid trying to make sense of it all. Large family, very active in the anti-war movement. I remember on television just being captivated. Took a long time to come around to the topic. Probably living in Barcelona, Spain, when Francisco Franco died and the democracy movement flourished, got me hooked on history. And I went to graduate school really looking for a topic on social justice and social movements that would shed light on where we are today, but that would be historical. And I had a great mentor, Claiborne Carson, and I had, before graduate school, not a lot of knowledge, a lot of interest, but he brought me on board the Martin Luther King Papers project at its birth, and the rest, as we say, is history.
Martin Luther King is such a legendary figure, so why tackle him as your first book?
I was very intimidated to do so, and yet I was encouraged to do so. The more I read about him at the time, the more I realized that what I was reading in the unpublished papers, the speeches and sermons, correspondence, didn't line up with the standard historiographical picture or with the kind of dominant cultural picture that we have of him. I discovered a lot more concern for the issues that are still unresolved in our political economy: poverty, big city segregation, and war. And it was at a time in my graduate career where I really didn't know what direction I wanted to take. So he almost kind of took me.
What is one common misconception people tend to have about Martin Luther King?
One common misconception: that he is a civil rights leader, that he is a consensus leader, that pretty much what he took on as a challenge is 90% solved. And that flattening of his public image and the identification of his public ministry with the "I'd have a dream" speech and the ideal of a colorblind, fair society, of a flattened picture of him, really doesn't do justice to him or to his context. Related to that misconception is that his dream drove the movement. I went to the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, both observances, and so many speakers said, "King's dream inspired me, and now we're doing this." And they didn't make reference to it was as if the March on Washington was simply a platform for King's dream. They didn't make reference to his connection to all the people who were there and who he was speaking to and with.
So what's next for you?
Next for me, I'm working now, thanks to a grant from the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities, thanks guys, on a book called Summer of Discontent, the 1963 Black Revolt and the Processing of Civil Rights. It's a story of mobilization from below, of conflict between various factions of the movement, students, the ministers, northern organizers, over just what civil rights was. The response of the Kennedy administration: they had to give a policy response, and they favored one part of civil rights, the public accommodations part of the Civil Rights Bill. And it's a story of media. What did the media pick up on? Did it have a tin ear for certain issues? So it's really about maybe 9 months in the history of this country trying to unpack this interaction between movement, the policy concessions, and what every American saw through the mass media.
Well, it was a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.